Disrespect is not just a word or an action. It is an energy, a vibration that communicates a person's internal truth far more clearly than their compliments or promises ever will. When someone disrespects you, they reveal how they truly perceive your worth, and more importantly, what they believe they have the right to do in your emotional space. It begins quietly, almost invisibly, especially with a narcissistic personality. They don't always start with something extreme or obviously damaging. Instead, it can come in the form of a subtle comment disguised as humor, a dismissive gesture when you express your feelings, or a small criticism that's framed as just being honest. And because it is so small at first, many women shrug it off, tell themselves it's nothing, or even decide that they're overreacting. But what feels small in the beginning is never small. It is a test, and the moment you passively accept it, the narcissist learns something powerful. They learn that your boundaries are flexible and that your self-worth can be negotiated. The truth is that disrespect is always intentional, even when wrapped in charm or excuses. It is the first doorway through which manipulation enters. And that is why the moment you allow it, even once, it becomes easier for them to widen that doorway. Before long, they become bolder, pushing farther, criticizing more openly, diminishing your confidence, and slowly conditioning you to believe that you deserve the tone they use. The dismissive attitude, the coldness, or the emotional neglect. But none of this begins with cruelty. It begins with the acceptance of the first small disrespect. That is why the most powerful act of self-protection a woman can ever practice is recognizing disrespect in its earliest form and refusing to negotiate with it. You must understand this deeply. When someone disrespects you, you don't need to fight, argue, prove yourself, or demand that they see your value. The moment you do that, you shift into a position where you are defending your worth to someone who has already decided it is negotiable. And if someone believes your value is something they can raise or lower based on their moods or insecurities, they will never stop adjusting it downward. A narcissist does not disrespect you because you lack worth. They disrespect you because they know you have worth, and they want to chip away at the parts of you that might one day wake up and walk away from them. Their disrespect is a strategy, even if they are not consciously aware of it. They want to make you question yourself because a woman who doubts herself is far easier to control. And so the rule becomes sacred. Do not negotiate with disrespect. Do not debate it. Do not justify it. Do not rationalize it. Do not try to fix it. Do not wait for it to improve. The moment you feel it, acknowledge it for what it is. A signal that this person does not hold the capacity to love you in the way you deserve. And you withdraw your emotional availability from that space, not as a punishment, not as manipulation, but as protection of your soul. What makes disrespect so damaging is not the action itself, but the story it plants inside your mind. When you allow someone to disrespect you, a part of you begins to wonder if maybe you deserved it. That seed grows. You begin to accept less, tolerate more, overlook red flags, and explain away behavior that your soul knows is not aligned with love. And the narcissist thrives in that confusion. They want you to become so accustomed to their tone and their dismissiveness that you no longer recognize it as abnormal. Their manipulation becomes easier because you start doubting your right to be treated with tenderness, care, or consideration. But something powerful happens when you draw a line and refuse to negotiate with disrespect. When you stand in your worth and calmly step away or stop engaging with someone who violates your emotional space, you shift the entire dynamic. You show them that your value is not up for debate, that their opinion cannot rewrite your identity, and that their behavior does not dictate your response. You become unpredictable to them, and unpredictability is something a narcissist cannot handle. They rely on you reacting, explaining, defending, proving. Without that, they lose their power. Disrespect cannot survive where self-worth is rooted firmly. So, the deeper your self-worth grows, the more quickly you notice when someone is trying to diminish it. You begin to feel the shift in your body. The tension, the unease, the tightening in your chest, signals from your intuition that something is misaligned. And instead of silencing those signals, you honor them. You give your inner voice authority again. You trust it when it says, "This does not feel right." You stop giving the benefit of the doubt to someone who has shown you multiple versions of their disregard. You stop accepting apologies that are followed by the exact behavior you hoped would change. You begin to understand that your life, your heart, and your peace are too sacred to allow anyone to chip away at them through subtle disrespect. And with that understanding, something extraordinary happens. You no longer attract people who need to shrink you in order to feel powerful. Your energy changes. Your boundaries become clear. Your self-respect becomes radiant. And narcissistic personalities can no longer hook into your world. They cannot manipulate a woman who knows her worth. They cannot confuse a woman who listens to her intuition. They cannot diminish a woman who honors her boundaries. The moment you refuse to negotiate with disrespect, you reclaim your power, your voice, your dignity, and your inner freedom. Emotional bait is one of the most common tools a narcissist uses to gain control over a woman's inner world. It's subtle, strategic, and deeply psychological. They rarely manipulate through direct force. Instead, they seek to pull you into emotional reactions that weaken your clarity and strengthen their influence. And the difficult truth is this: as long as you react, they succeed. Emotional reaction is their fuel. Your confusion, frustration, sadness, fear, or desperation becomes the energy they feed on. They don't necessarily want your love. They want your emotional engagement. Because when you are emotionally involved, you are easier to influence. When you are calm and centered, you become untouchable. A narcissist throws emotional bait in many forms. Sometimes it appears as a sudden cold silence, leaving you confused and anxious. Sometimes it is a criticism said in just the right tone to trigger insecurity. Sometimes it is a fabricated accusation or a dramatic exaggeration designed to make you prove your loyalty or innocence. Other times, they will withdraw affection without explanation, watching silently to see how desperate you become in trying to restore the connection. These tactics are not random. They are tests designed to measure your emotional dependency. If you react strongly, they know they still hold psychological power over you. But something remarkable happens when you stop reacting. When you pause instead of defending yourself, observe instead of absorbing, and stay still instead of being thrown into emotional chaos, you disrupt their entire strategy. They depend on your emotional responses because those responses tell them where your weak points are. Every time you explain yourself, argue, beg for clarity, or show distress, they learn how to control you more effectively. This is why refusing to take emotional bait is not just a technique. It is liberation. It is important to understand that the emotional bait they use is crafted to provoke your wounds, not your logic. They target your fear of abandonment, your desire to be understood, your need for harmony, your hope for love, and your instinct to fix things. A narcissist studies you, not to love you better, but to manipulate you more effectively. They notice what comments make your face change, what situations make you anxious, and what triggers make you jump into explanation mode. When they want control, they push those emotional buttons intentionally. And that is why your new strength lies in learning not to react, not to rise to the bait, not to let them see your inner world shaken. When you choose stillness, you cut the invisible strings they have placed on your emotions. Stillness becomes your authority. A calm woman is a threat to someone who thrives on instability. When they push you to react and you remain grounded, it exposes their inability to influence you. They cannot stand it. They become agitated, confused, and sometimes even angry, not because you have done something wrong, but because they feel their control slipping. This moment is sacred, because it is the first time you are not feeding their need for emotional dominance. The power of not reacting is not about silence as punishment, It is about silence as clarity. It is about showing yourself that you no longer need to grip onto someone else's chaos. You no longer need to prove your innocence to accusations designed only to provoke you. You no longer need to chase someone who withdraws affection for manipulation, not for love. Your calmness tells them, you no longer decide how I feel. And that is when emotional freedom begins. Do not take emotional bait, you must learn to identify it. You must learn to feel the moment your body reacts. Your heart races, your breath shortens, your stomach tightens. That physical response is your intuition warning you that someone is trying to hook you into emotional drama. When you notice it, pause. Breathe. Become aware. Remind yourself that reacting will only pull you deeper into their game. This pause, this quiet moment of awareness, is more powerful than any argument you could ever give them. And here's the beautiful truth. When you stop reacting, they lose interest. A narcissist cannot bond with a woman they cannot provoke. Your refusal to engage sends a message that their drama has no audience, their chaos has no participant, their bait has no bite. It shows them that your emotional world is your own, not a playground for their insecurities. Over time, your lack of reaction does something even more profound. It brings you back to yourself. You begin to reclaim emotional energy that was previously wasted on conflict, confusion, and chaos. You stop living in reaction mode. You stop waiting for the next emotional hit. You stop feeling responsible for someone else's moods. You stop trying to restore peace when they intentionally shatter it. You begin to feel the return of inner clarity, inner authority, inner grounding. A woman who no longer reacts becomes a woman who sees clearly. She becomes a woman who no longer internalizes someone else's dysfunction as her own fault. She becomes a woman who recognizes manipulation the moment it appears. She becomes a woman whose peace cannot be stolen by someone else's emotional theatrics. She becomes a woman who finally realizes that true power lies not in controlling another person, but in mastering her own internal world. And once that transformation occurs, emotional bait is no longer bait. It is simply noise. A narcissist cannot manipulate a woman who refuses to be dragged into emotional chaos. They cannot trigger someone who has healed the wounds they once aimed for. They cannot use silence, anger, or drama to control someone who has learned to stay steady within herself. The moment you stop reacting is the moment they lose control, and the moment you gain yourself back. There is a wisdom inside every woman that speaks long before her mind can explain, long before her logic can justify, and long before her emotions can fully articulate what is wrong. This wisdom is intuition. It is the quiet inner knowing that rises from a deeper place, a place untouched by manipulation, unclouded by fear, and unshaken by someone else's narrative. And when you are dealing with a narcissist, your intuition becomes your greatest source of protection, clarity, and empowerment. Because a narcissist's most powerful weapon is not their charm or confidence. It is their ability to distort your reality until you begin doubting what your intuition already knows. Gaslighting is not simply lying. It is the intentional twisting of your perception until you question the very instincts meant to guide and protect you. You express concern about something they said, and they deny it aggressively. You mention how their tone hurts you, and they accuse you of being sensitive. You sense distance or coldness, and they insist everything is fine while their actions tell you otherwise. Slowly, you begin to feel lost within your own emotions. You hesitate before voicing concerns. You second-guess your reactions. You feel guilty for wanting clarity and ashamed for needing emotional consistency. This is exactly where they want you, confused, off balance, and unsure of your truth. Because confusion makes control easier. But intuition is the one thing they cannot gaslight. Even when they deny your reality. Even when they twist conversations. Even when they rewrite the past or distort your memories. Your intuition continues to whisper the truth. You feel the discomfort in your chest, the tightness in your stomach, the heaviness in your spirit. You sense the inconsistency even when they try to mask it. You notice the hidden hostility behind their jokes, the manipulation behind their charm, the selfishness behind their affection, and the emptiness behind their promises. Your intuition is not fooled, even when your heart wants to believe in their potential. The real challenge is not hearing your intuition. It is trusting it. Many women are conditioned to prioritize harmony over truth, to protect others' feelings at the expense of their own, to give endless second chances, to interpret red flags as misunderstandings, and to silence their instincts in hopes that love, patience, or kindness will create change. But intuition does not speak to warn you because you are mistrustful. It speaks because you are wise. It speaks because something deep within you recognizes emotional danger even before your mind can rationalize it. When you honor your intuition, you reclaim your inner authority. You stop outsourcing your truth to someone who benefits from your confusion. You stop allowing a narcissist to define what is real or acceptable. You begin to trust the sensations in your body, the changes in your energy, the shifts in their behavior, and the silent signals that something is not aligned. You learn that your inner knowing is not something you need permission to acknowledge. One of the most freeing realizations a woman can ever have is that she does not need evidence to justify her intuition. Evidence comes later. Intuition comes first. A narcissist will demand proof while conveniently creating an environment where proof is impossible. They deny, deflect, distract, reverse blame, and manipulate the narrative so completely that you feel like you are holding smoke in your hands. That is why intuition is essential. It cannot be debated away. It does not rely on their approval or agreement. It does not vanish simply because they refuse to acknowledge it. When you begin trusting your intuition above their narrative, everything changes. The fog lifts. You see patterns you once excused. You recognize manipulation you once normalized. You understand that their inconsistency is not accidental. It is strategic. You stop believing their apologies when their actions repeat the same cycle. You stop internalizing their accusations. You stop feeling responsible for their moods. You stop trying to earn love from someone who uses affection as a tool rather than a gift. You realize that the pain you feel is not a reflection of your inadequacy, but a reaction to their dysfunction. Little by little, your inner voice becomes louder than their manipulation. Your clarity becomes stronger than their confusion. Your intuition becomes the compass guiding you out of emotional entanglement. And they feel that shift. They sense when their influence begins to fade. They sense when you are no longer emotionally dependent on their validation. They sense when your eyes see them clearly, without illusion or hope or excuses. And at that moment, their ability to control you weakens. A narcissist cannot manipulate a woman who trusts her intuition. She becomes unpredictable because she is no longer swayed by their emotional tactics. She no longer takes their words at face value. She no longer gets caught in their cycles of affection and withdrawal. She no longer clings to potential over reality. She no longer ignores the discomfort in her spirit just to maintain peace. She becomes grounded, aware, and deeply connected to her own internal truth. And ultimately, your intuition becomes the bridge between confusion and freedom. It is the gentle pull that leads you away from emotional chaos and back into your own power. It is the guiding light that reminds you that your spirit recognizes truth long before your mind understands it. And when you listen to that light, no matter how skilled their manipulation, can dim it boundaries are one of the purest expressions of self-respect. Yet, for many women, they are also the hardest things to uphold, especially when dealing with a narcissist. This is because boundaries do not simply protect your time or your space. They protect your emotional identity. They define what energy you allow into your world, what behavior you accept, and what treatment you refuse to tolerate. And a narcissist by nature hates boundaries, not because they misunderstand them, but because boundaries threaten the access they depend on. Their power comes from unrestricted entry into your emotions, your attention, your empathy, and your vulnerabilities. Setting boundaries is the act that breaks this access completely. You must understand that a narcissist is not afraid of losing you. They are afraid of losing control of you. They fear losing the emotional reactions they feed on, the validation they extract, the admiration they demand, and the psychological influence they enjoy. So, the moment you set a boundary, they feel their influence shrinking. The moment you enforce a boundary, they feel their grip weakening. And the moment you maintain a boundary without explanation, they feel something even more disturbing: your independence. One of the greatest mistakes a woman can make is explaining her boundaries to someone committed to breaking them. A narcissist does not want to understand your boundaries. They want to debate them. They want to twist them, question them, and turn them against you. Why are you being dramatic? Why are you acting cold? Why can't you just let things go? Why are you treating me like this? Every question is designed to pull you back into justification mode. Because once you start explaining, you begin doubting. And self-doubt is the soil where manipulation grows. This is why the real power lies not in declaring boundaries, but in living them. You say less and do more. You stop reacting and start observing. You stop engaging and start detaching. You stop giving multiple chances to someone who has shown you repeatedly that they don't value your well-being. Your boundaries become actions, not announcements. When a narcissist crosses a line, and they will, you do not argue or negotiate. You simply act. If they yell, you leave. If they lie, you disengage. If they insult you, you end the conversation. If they try to provoke you, you remain calm and inaccessible. If they withdraw affection to punish you, you remain emotionally steady. Every action communicates something far more powerful than words ever could. I am no longer playing your game. This is not about punishing them. It is not about manipulating them back. It is about protecting yourself. It is about reclaiming the dignity that got lost somewhere between their chaos and your hope. Boundaries remind you that your life is your own, and you have every right to remove yourself from situations that disturb your peace. But here is the truth many women struggle with. Boundaries will anger a narcissist. They will accuse you of changing, becoming cold, becoming selfish, or being difficult. Understand this clearly. They are not upset because you are doing something wrong. They are upset because you are doing something right. They are losing the emotional control they once had over you, and this threatens the fragile ego they hide behind confidence and charm. When someone reacts negatively to your boundaries, it reveals they benefited from you having none. This is where your strength must rise. You must hold your boundary even when they test it. Because they will test it again and again. They will push you, challenge you, guilt-trip you, and try to draw you back into old patterns. They will behave sweetly for a moment, just to see if they can still influence you. The moment you soften, they will return to the same behavior you were trying to protect yourself from. This cycle is predictable, and your boundary must be stronger than your desire to believe their momentary kindness. A boundary is not a request for respect. It is a declaration of self-respect. It is you saying, I choose peace over chaos. I choose clarity over confusion. I choose myself over your manipulation. Something transformative happens when a woman consistently enforces her boundaries. She becomes emotionally neutral to manipulation. She stops reacting to provocation. She stops trying to fix someone who benefits from staying broken. She stops giving her power to someone who never intended to use it responsibly. Her silence becomes strength, or her distance becomes clarity. Her lack of engagement becomes liberation. A narcissist cannot function around a woman with boundaries. She is too stable, too self-aware, too grounded, and too difficult to manipulate. She no longer bends under pressure. She no longer crumbles under guilt. She no longer takes their behavior personally. She stops participating in the emotional tug-of-war they rely on. And ultimately, boundaries do something even more profound. They remind you of who you were before the manipulation began. They return you to your own voice. They guide you back to your own intuition. They restore the dignity that was slowly eroded by emotional confusion. They rebuild the confidence that got weakened by constant criticism or passive-aggressive behavior. They reconnect you to your own worth. The truth is simple but powerful. A woman with boundaries becomes untouchable to a narcissist. She cannot be controlled, manipulated, or diminished. She sees clearly. She acts decisively. She protects herself fiercely. And she refuses to apologize for honoring her own peace. That is the liberation boundaries bring. And it is a liberation every woman deserves.